Our brains are super lazy. Hit me hard, hit me fast, give me a call to action, and let me go home.
What makes an experience unforgettable? Why do some moments spark action, while others fade away unnoticed? And what if we could measure the exact second that someone actually cares?
When you add a social layer to whatever that experience is, it increases the neurologic value.
Today, I sit down with Dr. Paul Zak, a world-renowned neuroscientist, author, and creator of Immersion, a groundbreaking tool that has completely shaped how companies, educators, and marketers think when it comes to capturing our attention and inspiring action. This is the Curiosity Blueprint, brought to you by Flying House Media. And in this episode, Dr. Zak and I unpack why likes don't move markets,
90% of ads have no effect on sales.
how to build what he calls a give-a-shit experience,
To get you to care about your product or service that you're talking about emotionally, you've got to tell a story.
and why the best stories don't beg to be liked. They dare to be felt. Let's jump right in. And again, I just want to thank you so much for being part of the podcast. As I was mentioning to you earlier, our team works a lot in the space of creating content that's memorable, or at least doing our best to create content that's memorable and create experiences that are memorable. So your book, Immersion, really just hit so many notes that I was interested in. I'm also a parent, so talking about how immersion works in the education space. I'm a business owner, so learning how to lead a team better. Everything that you write about has been absolutely fascinating to me. So first, just to thank you for being here, but second, what is it about this idea of immersion that drew you to it? Why were you compelled to take such a deep dive into this content?
Yeah, kind of for two reasons. One, thank you for those kind words, first of all. First is, we have so many crappy experiences as customers or as students or, we're all overeducated. And you've had professors who just drone on in a monotone. You're thinking, man, this is awful. The DMV, the post office, let's not get started. Or for that matter, randomly at Starbucks. So generally pretty good. So really looking at what motivates individuals to have a amazing experience. So what's the underlying neurologic basis for that? So because I want to have a general understanding of human behavior, if I just ask people, hey, did you like that? I don't learn much about that. What I really want to know is what parts of this experience are most valuable to that customer? What parts of that class will you remember? How do I, as a business owner, create extraordinary experiences from in-person to online to marketing so that people are not only going to remain customers, be loyal, but be raving fans, right? What's better for your business than to have your existing customers go, hey, I have this friend, you got to talk to him. I'm going to connect you to him because you guys just blew my mind. And you're like, oh, that's the best, right? So the second part of that, which is, I think the science part is more interesting maybe for me, which is our brains are super lazy, right? And so to see this big response in this network that I've called Immersion, which is how the brain values social emotional experience, it's just like, holy crap, I love this thing. Again, it's unconscious. I can't really relate that very clearly. And so by doing 20 years of science on how the human brain values those peak experiences in life, then we've created a bunch of interesting new science and also created technology so that people can actually use that science to create better experiences.
Well, now, and you say our brains are lazy. Is this kind of that cost-benefit analysis that we do where your brain is kind of thinking, is this worth my time? Am I going to invest myself into something? Or is it this idea that the brain typically feels that it knows what's coming, and so you kind of have to take it by surprise in order to perk it up?
Oh, great question. Both of those, right? So the brain's about 3% of body weight, burns about 20% of your calories. So we've evolved to manage that high overhead by establishing default pathways in the brain that are very efficient or low energy to run. Those manifest as habits. So I don't know why, but I buy Tide laundry detergent. I hardly look at the price. I don't know. It works. It's fine. They have lots of options. That's the best thing. Who makes that? Procter & Gamble, maybe. Whoever makes that, that's the best, right? I don't even think about it. Unless the price is really, really different. I'm just not going to change. And so if I want to break through that noise, if I sell, gosh, I don't even know what kind of laundry detergent, Dreft, I sell some other kind of detergent, I've got to do something really powerful that knocks me out of that default behavior. And that is creating something that's extraordinary. And that could be marketing, it could be in store, it could be a person giving out free samples. The whole thing at Costco, I think, is so interesting, right? And other big box stores where you have free samples often of food, but sometimes of products as well. And it's not the sample, it's the experience, right? It's the person. Whenever I've seen that happen and if I purchase something, it's because the person is so wonderful. Like, oh yeah, we're the owners of this company and we just got Costco to carry this thing and try it. We think it's awesome. And you're like, wow, this person's so nice. The food's good, of course, right? So how do we elevate the experiences we're having so that this is as powerful as possible? So how do I break through that pathway? Then, as you said correctly, the brain loves the new thing. And so what we found in the data is that we like the new thing that's similar to what we know, but not too weird. If it's too weird, I just can't get my head around it. It's too different than my general experience. So it ceased to be so relevant for me. So again, if you're selling some product in Costco and you're speaking in Swahili, which I don't speak, I'm just stuck, right? But if you're speaking, I'm thinking of an actual example for me. You have this, you're selling me gumbo and you have a Louisiana accent and you're from the Bayou. And I'm like, oh, this is so interesting and weird. Like I never met anybody from the Bayou making gumbo. Yeah, I'll try that. Why not?
Well, the timing of this conversation is so interesting because my team and I have been doing a lot of work on this creating extraordinary experiences concept. The idea for us being there are thousands of other video production companies out in the world, and many of them can make really high quality video. So for us, we lean so much into the experience where yes, you're going to get this great video, but you're going to enjoy the experience along the way. The path to get there is a part of the product. And so as we were thinking of analogies for that, part of it was you go to a 5-star restaurant and the food is absolutely amazing, but the service is slow, it's cold inside, the guests or the staff is rude, you don't seem to be taken care of. How great was that meal really? Are you really going to give it 5 stars? So this idea of experience is, yes, the food is amazing, but the entire process of eating it needs to be enjoyable for you to remember it.
Right. So that's one key takeaway for listeners, which is when you add a social layer to whatever that experience is, it increases the neurologic value. Again, I've called that immersion. It's a 1-second frequency data stream coming out of the brain, immersion with a capital I, term of art. But we recently had this is not in the book, had a subscriber at a very high-end restaurant in Canada that was moving into the US, and they wanted to really have this kind of wow experience. And so they sent me almost like a mystery shopper to some of their restaurants. Didn't tell anybody. I have an open check, brought some friends, and amazing experience through most of it because the service was great, the food was great, lots of unexpected surprises. And it was like a hour and a half lunch, $200 for 2 people. I'm cheap. That's a lot of money for lunch.
Yeah.
The last 45 minutes, nada. Hardly got touched by the waiter or waitress. The checkout, there was no surprise. There was no, let's take a photo. If you spend $100 a person for lunch, something's happening. That person say, hey, let's take a picture. And why not have the name of the restaurant behind me? I can post that on Instagram or X or whatever, right? So, they're missing out on this kind of core part of it. And so when they see this data, like good, oh, not so good. Again, I could have told you that on a self-report, but there's something amazing about having second-by-second data to say, oh, here are the peak parts of that. And they're almost always when that product or service is enhanced because of the social interaction. So again, neurologically, our brains are set up very different than most other animals in which we're acutely sensitive to social information. That's why we have this social emotional evaluation network in our brains. And so I think for businesses to lean into that and to create the extraordinary, we all sort of know that intuitively, but to see second by second, oh, here's the thing that 90% of our customers love so much. So just to put a cap on that, one of the peak immersion experiences we found was we walked in this restaurant, we had reservations. They immediately gave us a glass of champagne. Unexpected. Hey, your table's ready in a couple minutes. Here's a glass of, no, you didn't ask. Here's a glass of champagne. Have a seat on the couch and we'll be right with you. Oh, that's wonderful, right? Even if you don't like champagne, you can say no, but now you're getting this little gift even before you start, right? And by the way, I was with my daughter who's 21. They didn't even ask for an ID. They're like, she's good. Have some champagne.
But it's kind of thinking that the story doesn't just happen at the table. It doesn't just happen up until the point when we've cleared the plates. The story happens from before you walk in to long after you leave. That's where a person's journey really is.
No, you see, yeah, why don't they send me a warm up before I made reservations online? Well, hey, we're super excited to see you, blah, blah, blah. And then afterwards, you still have my information, right? Why are you not following up and sending me, hey, we're so happy you were the first time visitor to X restaurant. Here's 10% off. We'd love to see you come back. Oh, wow. Okay. I had a great experience or pretty good experience. I mean, why not? This is just an information flow, right? So I think the innovation here is twofold. One is we have so much information about our customers. Let's use all of that in a non-creepy way. Just like, hey, we thought you had a great time. And the second is, having a technology to actually test bed version A, version B, version C without bothering people, just passively measure what your brain's doing. I mean, it took us 20 years, as you know, to develop this technology to measure neurologic immersion and then really use that to tweak this experience to drive up that value and create those raving fans.
Well, and this is where it's really interesting to me. So for those listeners and viewers that watch this conversation, a lot of our audience is in this marketing world. We focus a lot on marketers and the people that we work with. So could you, for that audience, really explain exactly what is immersion and how does it differ from liking?
Sure. Again, we're using immersion here as a term of art, as a 1-second frequency set of signals from the brain that we can measure using algorithms we apply to smartwatches. Lots of deep science behind that. So we're not using it in the casual sense. I'm using the technical sense. So look, here's my prop. So if you ask me how much I like these mints, compared to what? Compared to my kids? My kids talk back to me. They're awful. My dog's perfect, right? My dog's but how can I compare my dog or my kids to mints, right? So the problem with a liking question is that it's a conscious reporting of our unconscious emotional states, and the brain just doesn't work that way. If liking worked, every movie would be a hit. Every marketing campaign would move markets. People lie because we're asking them to do the impossible, which is relate our unconscious emotional experiences. And so what we find in the data, now we have tens of thousands of observations, is that liking and this valuation network in the brain are unrelated to each other. They're just zero correlation over and over and over for all the reasons that I just said. And if we look at outcome measures, predicting sales bumps, YouTube views, movie ticket sales, on and on and on, whatever that outcome is, immersion consistently predicts those outcomes with high accuracy, where liking has zero predictive ability in almost every setting. We really have to get away from this liking. So to put a cap on that, Jason, sorry to go long, but we see so many high impact ads, customer experiences. Let's focus on ads. Ads that are really not very likable. They score low on likability, but they move markets. Why? For the reasons we said earlier. They're unusual. There's something I kind of know about, but they're different. They are understandable. They're relevant to me. And they're kind of like, what the heck's going on here? So again, I want to have new, but not too new. And that's a difficult task for anyone creating content, right? How do I make it unique, interesting, so that people will talk about it, remember it, generate buzz? That's what immersion captures. It captures the actions. That's how we found immersion. It predicts the actions that people take, not their feelings or their intentions. And so by having a neurologic prediction engine of outcomes, we just work backwards to find out what causes that action in the brain. And again, 20 years of my life to do this. I work slow, I'm not very efficient. So, so I think I'm a behavioral neuroscientist. I'm only interested in outcomes. I'm not interested in your feelings. If you like it, you don't like it, I don't really care. It's nice if you like it. Generally, these peak immersion experiences are also self-reported as enjoyable, but the opposite's not true. If I say I like something, it doesn't mean it's good. In fact, we have found, looking at Super Bowl commercials over many years, which are rated by USA Today for 30 years they've done this, there's a negative correlation between liking and YouTube views and YouTube comments. So the more people say they like something, the less buzz it generates. whereas there's a positive relationship between immersion and those outcome measures.
When you had brought up in your book two examples that I immediately set the book down and went and watched. One of them was Diet Coke's Groove commercial, which featured an awkward dancing woman who is drinking a flavored Diet Coke, and compared that to an Amazon commercial where Alexa loses her voice, which has all the star power that you could ever imagine. It's a 2-minute spot. It's a very clever idea, in my opinion, but the immersion on these two seemed very different. And in watching those, I was surprised to see where you had said the Diet Coke spot had a good immersion score. I was very surprised because I personally did not find that to be a very likable spot. I was a little bit confused by it. So when you do measure that immersion and you throw likability out the window, what is it about that uniqueness when you see this woman dancing, drinking a Diet Coke? Why does that create an immersion experience?
Yeah, that's a good question. So really, there's two parts of that. One is being attentive to it, right? So you've got to be focused on it. If you're distracted, then you're not going to have a great experience because the conscious attention is kind of a 0-1 variable. I'm either attending to you, Jason, or looking at my window. I can't really do both. And the second is it's got to generate this emotional resonance. So emotions are how the brain tags experiences as important. So if I see another, I don't know, Budweiser commercial with Clydesdales, it's pretty. Is it generating an emotional experience? Maybe I have memories of, seeing a Clydesdale as a child, maybe for some people. But for most of us, it's so oversaturated. It doesn't have that kind of delta, that new thing that I'm looking for. Where the Diet Coke Groove commercial was like, okay, I know Diet Coke, so I've got a base to understand this. Now it's this weird woman dancing. You guys can look this up later. Asymmetric yellow wall. It's filmed in a weird way. She is so awkward, right? Mm-hmm. Very odd. Where the Amazon commercial, what we showed is if that thing ran for 30 seconds, it would have killed it. But it was the same gag for 2 minutes. Alexa can't help you, and therefore a famous star fills in over like 4 times. We got it. So again, This lazy brain goes, okay, I get the joke. It was funny the first time. It's a little bit funny the second time. The third and fourth, I don't care anymore. So, as I said in the book, Amazon burned, just to air that, they burned more than $20 million. I don't know, triple that for the stars to get on there.
Yep.
It should have been a 30-second commercial. Hit me hard, hit me fast. So again, for listeners, hit me hard, hit me fast. Give me a call to action when you've got this peak emotional state and let me go home. And as you know from the book, one of my major pet peeves is that all these commercials go on YouTube. They don't pay the $15 an hour intern to put a hot link on YouTube. So if you capture me emotionally, now is when I should do something, right? Not like find us on Amazon, go to your local store, too little, too late. So, again, think of this cost benefit calculator in the brain as inducing friction, right? You want to reduce all the friction points to taking an action, to making a buy, whatever that is. So why not hot link everything, right? It's on YouTube. So again, free advice is worth what you paid for it, but that $15 an hour intern can just add the hot link to whatever you're selling or more information for that matter, or put your email in for 10% off. I mean, I really want to see the impact of this. And I think we've been so stuck in listening to what people say they like. I'm in the Steve Jobs world. If you ask people what they like, they say they want or Henry Ford, they want a faster horse-drawn carriage.
Well, it's kind of taking this notion of you want the viewer, the consumer, the people to have as few steps as possible, probably so they don't, so over the course of the time from them taking that action, they don't lose their interest. If I have to click more than one link, I can pretty much guarantee I will have been distracted by that point and moved on to something else. So it's kind of packaging it at the right moment with the fewest steps possible so that they can take action.
Yeah, exactly. So think of this as falling in love. So the pathways for neurologic immersion and romantic love are very similar, actually, right? So we go, oh my God, this person, they're so cute, they're so interesting. So if you've got me to fall in love with your content, with the thing that you're trying to tell me about, it's like if you see this cute girl on the airplane or guy on the airplane or the subway, whatever it is, if you never see him again, it was enjoyable, you've got to act on it, right? So I met my wife on an airplane. Yes, she was cute. She was interesting. I started talking to her, and 30 years later, we're married with kids, right? So you've got to actually act on that kind of peak immersion experience. And so I think we feel a lot of this in the in-person world, right? Where if we're a salesperson or a server, at a restaurant, when someone's so excited, that's when you want to make the ask, right? You don't want to just let things peter out. So one of the examples I gave in the book, Jason, as you know, was movie trailers, so 3-minute theatrical movie trailers. If you look at those for listeners, those are half of a narrative arc. They set up the characters, they put it in a crisis, they generate all this tension, and then they hold it. They don't resolve that tension. A good movie trailer. You have to buy a ticket,
Yeah.
right? Opening March 15th. And you're like, oh, holy crap, I got to find out what happened to these people. They're stuck in space and they're never going to get home. So I think advertising is the same way. Why should we complete the narrative arc? Well, we can hold that tension, and now let me do something right now, right? So, reduce the friction for sure. And again, we all know that, but the the difference here, what we're adding to that conversation, is that these emotional responses are very rapid and they'll resolve pretty quickly. And so once you've captured me emotionally, my brain goes, "This is the best thing since sliced bread. I want it now. Purchase."
Yep. Well, there's another distinction that I would love your help in making, and this is something I've talked about a while. Is when we hear this word emotion, it seems to me that we immediately think of something tear jerking or something that is dramatic. But there are actually, and correct me if I'm wrong, 27 different kind of distinct emotions that a human can feel. And so I think my question for you is, when we talk about emotional impact, are there particular emotions that you are speaking to, or does this relate to all emotions? And do any of them work better than the others?
Yeah, there was an article about 10 years ago in Fast Company magazine called "The Rise of Sadvertising." If I can just get people to cry at my
Yeah.
ad, and it's true. All those emotions they're not distinct at all. They're all they go through common pathways in the brain. Again, that 27 types is all in self-report. So I don't believe in self-report. I believe in physiologic data. So what immersion captures is, I'm going to use one bad word, but it won't shock anybody. One of our early subscribers to the Immersion platform called Immersion the give a shit measure. Right? Somehow I've got to get you to care about this thing. And again, because my lazy brain just wants me to idle most of the time, when we see this big metabolic investment that I'm calling immersion, then the brain goes, oh, I really care about this. So think of this as scaling up the degree to which I give a shit or care about this thing. So I don't care which emotion that relates to. And I don't even want, again, none of those emotions are distinct. So I don't want to try to do that. So all this, facial coding crap has all been debunked for decades. It's just crap. Doesn't predict, because those emotions are not distinct, and they certainly are not distinct from twitches in your face. Rather, we asked this question, as you know, this was early funding by the U.S. Department of Defense and the U.S. intelligence community and others. Are there sets of signals in the brain that accurately and consistently predict what people will do after a message or an experience? Right? They funded us with millions of dollars of taxpayer money, thank you, U.S. taxpayers, to create a neurologic prediction engine, because they wanted to give soldiers the same tool that marketers and advertisers want, which is a test bed to increase the likelihood that the content we create actually influences behavior. Right? So that's a different question than, do you like it? Is it pretty? When I give
Right.
these talks, I have a great quote from David Droga. Probably is a genius. I mean, I haven't met him, but I mean, it's just an amazing work. And the quote was, our clients continue to use us because they love how beautiful, how creative our content is. I don't care. All I want to do is move freaking markets, right? Creative, uncreative, ugly, unlikable. I don't care, right? I'm a behavior guy. I just want to move markets. And we do know that sometimes low budget, almost found footage kind of commercials
Mm-hmm.
kill, right? So there's lots of ways to play this game, but I think, I'm going to suppress the name of the company, but one of the subscribers, a very well-known British ad agency, they before they used our technology, they would say, "Oh yeah, we'll make 100 versions of a new ad. We'll put it on the internet, and then we'll see how many clicks we get, and then we'll, use that to know which one we were going to release on TV." 100 versions? You don't know what the hell you're doing if you're making
No.
100 versions, right? You're
No.
just hoping. And also, clicks do not mean purchases. right? So again, for viewers and listeners, second takeaway, key takeaway, attention is just table stakes. You can get my attention by clapping your hands. Doesn't mean you really care about it. The caring is this emotional state. And to get you to care about your product or service that you're talking about emotionally, you've got to tell a story, a human scale story. It's got to have tension. And when your product or service helps resolve the tension in that story, you've got what I call product story congruence. The product and the story play with each other and go, oh, yeah, sometimes I'm super thirsty and I would like to have this kind of alcoholic beverage or this soft drink or whatever that is. And so that can be well done, but really it's story that human beings as social creatures are ultimately interested in because they tell us about other people like us from whom we can learn. I mean, that's why we're still seeing movies and reading fictional books. Why haven't we maximized all the fictional stories? Because they're human stories, right?
Hmm.
Even I don't know the Pixar, Wall-E or all these, they're basically anthropomorphizing robots. We're super interested in what this little robot in space will do because he has emotions, he has a crisis, and we think, well, I mean, unconsciously, it's like, yeah, if I were ever in this situation, yeah,
Right.
maybe I learn something and be amused.
Well, and that kind of connection as well. When you think story, it's that ability to help somebody see themselves in a situation. So, a lot of the work that we do, we work a lot in medical health and wellness space when we're creating content. And so, for us, that emotional aspect is from a I want to see some tears. That can sometimes be a kind of easy thing for us to do because the people we sit down with have gone to hell and back just to be able to sit in that chair across from me and share their story. And so, one thing we're always trying to do is how do we see this person not just as their symptoms? Because if I haven't had these symptoms, I can't relate to that, but see them instead as a person and what these symptoms took from them. And so, I think as we're crafting those stories, we're always looking to what does somebody at home who has not experienced cancer or who has not experienced life with a rare disease, what's going to make them be invested? Like you said, what's going to make them give a shit and activate their mirror neurons and have them see themselves in that person's shoe? And I think a lot of the time for us, it is us giving a shit, sitting down across from somebody and actually asking questions that we want to know about a person rather than a timeline of what happened next.
Right.
What I'm curious to know from your perspective, because you had mentioned before, the Amazon commercial. Once you get the bit, it's not as surprising the next time, and then it's even less surprising the next time I've lost interest. So let's say if we're creating 100 different pieces of content throughout the year that are all health related, medical related, it might be a very different story, a very different disease, or a very different health experience, but that story arc can be very similar. I remember the day when things changed for me, and then this is what happened and what it took from me. But now, thanks to this, I kind of feel like I know who I am again. Very different person, very different story. But I wonder is the expectation then that if we keep telling stories in this same way, are we going to lose an audience because they can already predict what's going to happen?
Well, that's a great question. Again, I think it's the familiar uh, plus something that's novel. So, when we first discovered that it was a narrative arc that is the most effective way to sustain immersion, it was like, duh, like going back to, I don't know, English 101 in college, like, of course, that's the most effective way. We've been doing this for, 3,000 years at least. I mean, Aristotle wrote about it, right? So, um, but I think within that narrative arc, there's so many ways to flip it. Right? You could have the patient's spouse talk about how they felt they were losing their spouse. Right, there's all kinds of different variations on that basic narrative arc. Even I talked in the book about one of my favorite movies, Memento, that runs in reverse, right? You could run it in reverse. So I think um, you've got to have that increasing tension point. We think about, again, the brain, as you said, as a cost benefit calculator. If I don't have enough stakes for me to invest the neurologic energy to process that ad or that experience, I'm just going to tune out. It's just going to be background noise, just like the air conditioning is background noise, right? I'm not paying attention to it. So the narrative arc, I think, is going to stay with us, but I think it's variations on the theme. One example I've given in talks is like atonal music that happened in the early 20th century. Um, I've heard atonal music. I don't get it. It's just too weird for me. It's like on a different scale than the normal, Western music scale. Can't can't deal with it. And also it kind of faded away. People like it was like a nice idea, but it's too weird. So again, for viewers and listeners, it's something I know, but now add some twist to it, right? So even the Diet Coke Twisted Mango commercial, right? It still has an arc. There's still a tension point in the middle in which it cranks up. Where if you think of the Amazon Alexa loses her voice ad, the tension just dissipates straight down. I mean, if you look at and you know that intuitively, but looking at the data as well, it's the same thing over and over and over. So I don't want to do that same thing. I'm not answering your question very well, but I think the short answer is, you need to have rising tension at some point, either by the patient, either by the patient's family, could be the physician. I could think of this from the physician's perspective or a caretaker. Hey, we almost lost Barbara. Um, in beginning because we didn't know what was wrong with her and we didn't know who to even talk to. Okay, so now a third person perspective, right? So there's lots of ways to do this. Um, anyway, for listeners, I'm wandering too much. Open hot, whatever you do, don't bury the lead. I mean, that's again, journalism 101. I'm a regular TED speaker. I go to TED all the time. And half of those, I want to murder them because they do prep you at TED for months and months and months before you speak, rehearsals. And a lot of people will just give this chronological approach, right? Like as a child, I did, and then I like, by the time you get to the most exciting part of that TED talk, you're like, I don't even care anymore.
Right,
My
you're
butt hurts. I
lost.
want to,
Yeah.
yeah. But they had a guy at the last TED I was at in Vancouver last year who, like 2 weeks before, had just the U.S. paid a ransom to get him. He was a physician who went to volunteer in Afghanistan, helping the Taliban. So the Taliban now run Afghanistan, and like doing free, healthcare service. And Taliban kidnapped him and wanted this huge ransom. And here's this guy who looked like he didn't prepare a talk. He just said, 10 days ago, I was in some, cave in Afghanistan or whatever. And, the U.S. somehow got me out. I don't know. They paid some ransom. And he was like, American Afghani heritage. And so I thought, I'm going to give back to my country. I don't care who runs it. People need healthcare. Okay, that was amazing. He didn't bury the lead. His lead was 10 days ago, I was in a cave in Afghanistan. And I'm a doctor, and I went there to do free healthcare, and I got kidnapped. You're like, oh, holy crap. What kind of crazy story is this? Now I can backfill, right? How did I get there?
Yeah.
How did he get kidnapped? How did he get free? I mean, there's so many good questions. And, 18 minutes was not nearly enough to hear this guy talk. So, so open hot, don't bury the lead, but use that narrative arc because people will just understand it.
Well, and that attention right at the top, like you said, how could you not listen to this story if it starts that way? But then it seems you have to deliver all the way through. You can't let it just plummet down to nothing. You have to continue to bring people's emotional journey along with it to almost pay off that attention that you have at the top so it doesn't become kitschy.
Yeah, and any peak immersion moment is a chance for a call to action or a branding experience. So once you have this emotional peak, don't let it dissipate, even though that story has to resolve a little bit, at least at some level. What we've seen with really high impact commercials in terms of moving sales is that they'll have a branded something at an emotional peak, a car with a logo on it. They'll have the front of the store. So really think about ways to use those emotional peaks, even if it's not at the end of that ad that you're creating or content. There should be a real component there. So in my restaurant example, they should have had, after we had our obviously kind of cheap champagne, but it was a nice surprise. They should have had said, hey, you know what? We have a wonderful champagne that's twice as good as this. We'd love to get you another glass. It runs $20 a glass, but you guys like the low cost version, whatever. There's a way to do that. So I'm already excited. I'm having champagne. I'm sitting there with my daughter. We're having a nice lunch. I got an open check, which nobody knows. I'm ordering everything on the menu, right? And what a great experience. I mean, lovely, restaurant chain. And anyway, I think I'm NDA'd, so I can't mention them, but very high-end chain that, I would only go to, once a year kind of thing. And so play into that high emotional experience, right? It is something valuable is happening, accentuate that.
Yeah, and I think we do get kind of caught in that realm of let everything play out, and then you put the logo at the end, like you said before, learn more, and we kind of fumble what is the most important part of why you created this story in the first place. And it's something that I think a lot of people don't think about. Let's create a great story, and then the tag at the end is what you wait for. But if you realize you do that at high immersion points, you had given another example in your book about the Guinness spot, which I thought was amazing. Again, I watched that immediately, where there's a glass of Guinness being set at a table every day that's full as a bar opens, and it sits there all night until it closes, and then again, and then you realize at the end, obviously you know, but for our viewers, at the end, someone who had just been away in the military comes in and realizes that that glass was set there for him. And now you've had branding all the way throughout, and so when it hits at this height of emotion, you've already established who this is. So I thought that was a brilliant piece of ad work right there, and played to everything that you've been talking about.
And it's evergreen. So I've shown that ad many times. It's called Empty Chair. You guys, after you listen to this wonderful podcast, you can go watch that. It doesn't resolve all the issues. Who's the barmaid who's spraying the glass out? It's not his wife. If it's his wife, then the soldier walks in the pub, he'd go give her a kiss or something. No, it's just a neighborhood person, and he's kind of beat up and she's kind of beat up. They're not really beautiful people. It's a neighborhood story. It's about supporting your neighbors. It's about caring for other people. And maybe it's from traveling or whatever, but I've shown that literally hundreds of times. I still tear up sometimes when I play it. Like, it's just a perfect ad, maxed out the scale on neurologic immersion. So, that's an evergreen piece of content that they can just, reuse whenever they like.
Well, I would love to. I mentioned before we started recording that obviously immersion goes beyond. You talked about public speaking. It goes well beyond creating powerful ad spots or YouTube content. This can be brought into so many different aspects of our life. Public speaking, I think, takes a similar form to the content that we create, but this is also valuable in, you said, the armed forces. This is valuable to think of how we educate our students, and that's what I would really love to talk about next. I have 3 school-age children, one in high school, one in middle school, one in elementary school. And I can tell you, I know when I've lost my children's attention. And when I think about it, I know it's because I've been going on for way too long. And so I'm just curious, when it works measuring immersion in a classroom where you see a professor who sits down and drones on for an hour giving an almost dissertation and expects a class to learn, or somebody who incorporates different things, surprises the brain, involves the students in the game. Can you talk to me a little bit about that? How does this work for educating children and even educating adults?
Right. We're all lifelong learners. One of the longest subscribers to the Immersion platform publicly is Accenture, and they spend over $1 billion annually upskilling their employees. And the only method to assess the ROI from that training was that post-event survey that we've all done. Did you like the room? How was the lunch? Again, I don't care. I want to know, did this information get stuck in your brain so that you can use it when you get back to the office on Monday? So immersion correlates very strongly with information recall weeks later, again, because that emotional tagging says this is important. So highly emotional experiences are saved in memory in a way that makes them more easily accessible. And so what Accenture has found by almost 7 years now of using the Immersion platform is that it's about a 20-minute segment when people begin to tune out. So we've really got to think about, or Accenture has broken down their training into 20-minute segments. So no one speaks for more than 20 minutes. Then maybe you do some participatory task for 20 minutes, table work. Then you debrief for 20 minutes. So again, just like the ad, short, intense, and then now give me a recovery period. So just like when you're exercising, you need some recovery period. The same thing happens in the brain. If I'm asking you to make this big metabolic investment, this peak immersion experience to really understand the thing that we're trying to train you or educate you about, then I've got to put longer breaks in. So, we're kind of stuck on this tyranny of the 60-minute clock. It doesn't mean our brains work optimally on that basis. So I think education is going to be completely changed in the next decade, in which it's going to be much more self-learning videos, participatory tasks. It'll still be social because we learn a lot from each other. But this person standing in front of a room, which is literally medieval, is a very ineffective way to teach. So even when I teach, I still teach graduate courses. I use a lot of videos. I use tasks in the classroom. I see the classroom as a workshop. It's a discussion period. You prep before, and you get in and let's share from each other. Let's learn from each other. I'm going to lead that discussion because I probably have more experience. But I think the same thing happens to kids. There's some amazing new educational experiences in which there are no teachers, there are guides. Students begin with their parents to think about the goals that they want to reach. A great one for people listening is Acton Academy. There's a bunch of these all over private schools where they just figure out what the students like and then they build a curriculum around that. So, I mean, think how great that would be. Like, hey,
Hmm.
what do you like? Like, I'm a science guy. I like science stuff. Awesome. We're going to do science stuff. Another kid likes cartoons. Great. We're going to build in cartoons. You got to think about math. You got to think about English. You got to think about, geometry. You got to think about the topics you're talking about. So you can build it around that student's interests. Granted, this is hard to do at scale in the public schools, but I
Sure.
think there's a lot of really interesting experiments now going on in the educational space with charter schools and private schools.
As a student, for me, I was either an A student in a class or I was a C and D student in a class, and it directly correlated to what interested me. If I didn't care about the topic and didn't see a future for me, it was really hard for me to get engaged in that and pour over my notes in my book and actually understand the why behind anything I was learning. But for instance, animal biology was something that I loved, and I got over 100% in that class every single semester because I liked it and I was good at it. So is that something too that we can take into this is one, interest has to play a role in this. If a student is going to be engaged and have an immersion experience, I would think the experience has to be extraordinary, but they also have to care. And number two, are people more interested in things if they are good at them? Does that impact the quality of the work that they do?
Oh, great question. So when we look at live experiences, I think there's three dimensions we have found that you can influence that increase the impact or the return on that experience. The first is the audience, in this case, learners or customers, are they psychologically safe? Are they comfortable? So if you are tired or hungry or have to pee, you're burning bandwidth in your brain on those kind of necessary functions rather than being fully attentive and emotionally engaged by the experience. So first, establish psychological safety. Again, that means breaks. That means comfortable chairs and all the things that we don't have in public schools.
Hmm.
So right, open up bandwidth to have a great experience. The second is, again, structure. So then 20-minute segments, much more participatory learning, discussions, anything that engages. If you're just sitting there, you just, for any of us, even as adults, it's hard to just sit without, someone talking at you for an hour. It's very difficult. And the third is how that content is delivered. So it turns out that immersion is contagious. So if you have a professor or teacher who's just speaking in a monotone softly and they have low energy, your brain goes, because we're social creatures, unconsciously. This is obviously not very important to this person. But if you're talking like, oh my God, this is going to be the best class, you guys. We're going to have so much fun today. Strap in. It's going to be wild. We're going to do some crazy. We're like, oh shit, okay, this is happening, right?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so you've got to have people who are really excited about this. And I think that's one reason why at the university level is still important that professors like me do research, because we can be so excited because we're on the leading edge of something that's really cool to us. And then you sort of infect others with that excitement. Where I think, in a lot of schools, K to 12 and universities, you have people who, I don't know, it's their job. I've had so many of my kids went to public schools. So many teachers go, literally tell my children, like, I got 2 more years and I'm retiring. This person's not excited about what they're doing. Maybe they were when they were 25, but
Yeah.
that's just sad to me, right? Like, gosh, you should just retire now. I guess you're just booking in time. So, for public speakers, same thing, right? Don't bury the lead. Hit me with your best shot right up front. Have fun. Uh, you know, um, we share each other's emotional states. So if that speaker, if that trainer, if you're giving a talk and you're enjoying it, um, the other person will enjoy it. So I mentioned I gave a TED talk 2011. I've given I think 5 now, but anyway, really big one at 2011 in Big TED, and I had 10 months to prepare. But literally, Jason, my feet were shaking. I've given a zillion lectures. My feet were shaking before I went on, and my knees were shaking. And but I got that first laugh. I just relaxed, and people have said, "Oh my gosh, you're so relaxed." Well, sure. I workshopped that talk for 10 months.
Hmm.
and it was in Edinburgh, Scotland. And I walked around Scotland for 2 days during the TED conference, just saying that. So by the time I had got on stage, I had said it so many times, it was just relaxing. So
Yeah.
even though inside I was still stressed, I looked like I was relaxed because I had memorized it. And so preparation, 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 right? That's the key. And by the way, I'm a big fan of The Experience Economy by Pine and Gilmore. I think one of the best business books ever written. And in that, they talk about, business should be like theater. If you are customer facing, you should be rehearsing. You should know this as well as possible, and think of creating this mystery, this tension, this emotional experience. It shouldn't just be like, "Welcome to our store." Like, "Hey, thanks for coming in. How are you today? Gosh, we got some crazy stuff happening in the store." You're like, "Oh wow, what's going on here?" It's so easy to differentiate yourself with just a little bit of energy, a little bit of excitement. And part of that's just training and maybe paying people a little better. So, I think all this is doable. All the things I'm saying, I think, are not impossible to do. And we sort of intuitively know them. But for me, absent a measurement technology, we're just kind of winging it. And so that's why we developed this measurement technology.
Well, and I'll give you my ascientific proof that you're right. That is the moment when you were giving the examples of somebody speaking in a monotone voice versus the person who's lit up and happy. I felt myself, and I knew what you were doing. But the moment your face lit up, I smiled. I immediately mirrored it, and it really is that simple. When I think about it, because I'm also a business owner, so I own Flying House Media. I started 8 years ago, and I was foolish enough early on to think that other people were going to be excited about the things we were doing as I was. And then quickly had that reality of, well, I'm so excited about this because it's my company. I've got a lot riding on it, sure, but I also created this. And I realized that an employee coming in isn't going to share that excitement because they don't have that investment yet. And that's when I learned I can't just give the information and assume that everyone's going to feel about it the same way I am. I need to present. I need to give them a reason to feel invested in this, a reason to get excited and feel that they're making an impact. And that was a big change for me. And it seems so simple and obvious, but I think oftentimes we can assume that because we're excited, it's exciting for other people, and that's just not the case. So I can get excited about the simplest piece of book work that I'm doing, or the paperwork that I got done is very exciting, and I tell somebody else in the team, and they're like, they have no connection to that whatsoever. So I think that's an important thing that I've noticed too, both in my past occupations before I started a company to now, is a realization that you have to make an investment in other people's excitement. You have to think about it from their perspective if you want people to follow your path and be just as excited about this as you are.
And tell them why. I think, we're always so busy and we think of this sort of functional, here's the things we do, as opposed to this is why we do it. Like, you
Yeah.
started your company for a reason.
Yeah.
I'm sure it wasn't, I don't want to be wealthy, because you thought, hey, this, the industry I'm in just isn't doing this right. And I think
Yep.
there's a better way to do this. And so that origin story, like why we're here, number one, and number two, how we improve our customers' lives, is very valuable. So we've actually run experiments where we left out, I call this the purpose statement. So we paid people to do some boring task, enter emails. And then we told them, hey, you're entering emails because these go to our alumni for our university, so that students who their families never been to college, can actually come to our wonderful campus and have a scholarship to come here. And like 50% more productivity, more accuracy. People enjoyed the job more, just because they knew why.
Yeah.
So that why is super valuable. And again, why is more of an emotional state. This is why Jason is so passionate about what
Yeah.
he's doing. Oh gosh, okay. Not just this is what we do.
Yeah. Oh, that's the whole idea of starting with why. I quote Simon Sinek there, is an impactful idea because I think it, like you said, it goes back to being able to tell a story. So for us, we create thousands of videos every year, and some of them might not seem as exciting as the others. And so we always try and find who's that person on the other end and how is that going to impact them. And when you realize that you might have an impact on somebody's life that could really use that impact, suddenly that video doesn't seem so boring, or this task doesn't seem so boring. It means there's purpose behind it. and it's a lot easier to try harder when you know you're having an impact on somebody.
Yeah, for sure. And the we have to get out of our heads. There's this interesting philosophical dilemma that anyone who creates content or experiences has, which is absent, like measuring technology. I like this. It's got to be great. Actually, that's the wrong question. You're an expert, right? What you really want to
Hmm.
know is, does my audience, do my customers really get value from this? So I think if we move from liking to value, am I creating enough value for the people that this is aimed at? Then I'm really thinking differently. So I'm on the road all the time giving public lectures. Nice. Anyone who wants to hear what the nerds have to say, like me, and whatever venue I'm at, I think of how much value can I create for that audience. So given the thing I'm talking about, I have some expertise in that. How do I make it for this audience the most valuable thing that they're going to do at this conference or this event? And so I put a lot of time and effort into that value creation. And hey, if I create a lot of value, do you want to have me back? Sure. Do you want to talk to me afterwards? Sure. Right. So those are kind of the metrics I'm using, but I really have to think about from the audience perspective, not what I'm so excited about for what I've done in my career, but how do I create value for you particular individuals who are in some niche, medical doctors or psychologists or whoever I'm talking to, that is going to be valuable for them right now, and also entertaining, right? So it's all going to be edutainment. I'm sure you're in the same role, right,
Yeah.
Jason? It's got
Yep.
to be
Absolutely.
edutainment. Otherwise, the brain just goes. It's just if it's flat emotionally, then again, it's just the way our brains evolve. It just doesn't seem like it's that important unless it's got some tension, some emotion.
Well, it feels more like a task than it does something extraordinary. And
Yeah.
so we're always watching out for that. Um, my big question for you, and I don't want you to start some sort of war against all the focus groups in the world, but do you believe in some way that focus groups are a waste of time?
Yeah, for two reasons. I think, again, people lie because we're forcing them consciously to try to assess their unconscious emotional states, number one. And then number two, I've been in lots of focus groups like you have. Generally, you get one or two people who tend to run the show in focus groups. And then as social creatures, we want to get along with everybody. And, we're only there for an hour. Why make waves? And so, yeah, you end up having this bias. By the way, you see the same thing with NPS scores. So if you look at those data, about 15% of the people will actually fill out that post-experience survey. And of those, like 90% are people who are happy with it. So it's just meaningless. It's just, you're just
Yeah.
getting the happy people who are at a nice time. It's not at all a real view of what the experience is like for most people. So I do think it's important to talk to people. I think you'll find some real interesting little nuggets. People will leak out information that nice people might normally not say. So I'm not against focus groups. I'd like to enhance that by actually measuring that neurologic state, and
Hmm.
that's why we've done this work. We have I don't think I can say the name, but anyway, two of the big four TV networks use our technology to assess new TV shows. And so they'll come in and they'll put a wearable on people and use our technology. They'll still ask them questions. Yeah, what do you think of this actor or actress? What do you think of this storyline? Do you think the dog? I still want to know that stuff for sure,
Yeah.
but I also want to see when that actress comes on screen. Does my brain, if you will,
Right.
turn on? Does my brain react to the dog? The example I gave in the book, as you know, was why there are puppies in toilet paper commercials. Right? So
Yeah.
you put a puppy in a commercial, you're guaranteed to say people, "Oh, I love this commercial. Oh, it's got puppies." What kind of person would not say a commercial is great with that's got puppies in it? You have to be a psychopath, but it doesn't mean it helps sell that. So again, they're trying to add some emotion to that for sure, some good feelings, but it lacks that product story congruence. Unless the puppies are using toilet papers to do something, then it really doesn't help me sell toilet paper. It just goes, oh, puppies are awesome, babies are awesome, whatever cute little things I can throw in there. So um, it's hard to create content, and we want to have content that really captures people and teaches them something, makes them enjoy it just a little bit, and then in the best case moves them to take some kind of action if it's meaningful to them. And I think that's the beauty of the kind of decentralized capitalist system or voluntary exchange system we live in, which is I can just amuse you with my piece of content, but if it's meaningful to you and you've captured me, I'm like, actually, I need that thing.
Yeah.
right? No one's forcing you to do it. I can't force you to do anything. And for lots of people, you're just entertaining some folks or you're teaching them something. And that's great. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, but like you said, a like is not a sale. It's a very different thing. But and so we are also in an incredibly oversaturated market. I'm not going to remember the actual numbers you put in the book, but it's something like over 6,000 songs released, or there's thousands of songs released every day. Same with movies every year, things like that. We've become an oversaturated market. I think we're sold things at maybe 60,000 times per day. We see some sort of advertisement somewhere, and the truth is, the cynic in me wants to say that the overwhelming majority of those are not impactful. They might be boring. They might miss the mark. So do we, based on the actual neuroscience behind it, and when you're studying immersion, have you had the chance over the last 20 years to learn, are we getting better at it? Are we getting worse at it? Have you seen a global change on this where people are kind of cracking this code, or the other way around?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, the Advertising Research Foundation recently published a study showing that 90% of ads have no effect on sales. So
90%.
90%. So it means if you're an advertiser, you are really fighting hard to get people's attention. I think the change we've seen in the last, a decade is shorter. The 6-second bumper ad, I think, is very interesting. Um, you can tell a story in 6 seconds, right? You can do it. I'm surprised at how many of those are also lack story structure, but you can do a great 15-second ad if it's really good. It's got to be tight. So there is some real evidence that our attention spans have shortened, that we've been trained now to think of like brushing your teeth. It's, in the old days, just brush your teeth. Now I got to bring my freaking phone for 2 minutes and, watch a YouTube. It's like, man, what is wrong with me? Like, it's a 2-minute. Can't I spend 2 minutes by myself and just have thoughts? So, yeah, I don't think we've gotten better. I think we have got so much more technology. We have a lot more data. And I think this obsession with eyeballs and clicks is, again, just table stakes. You've got to get people to care. And there's probably only so many things you can care about in a day. And so I think consumers are getting much pickier about the content that they choose to watch. And we did this study, I think this is in the book, but I don't recall now, recently published, in which we, generally when you do experiments, you have people watch the entire ad. And we actually had a subscriber who said, our problem is we know that the longer you watch, the more likely you are to respond. So why would you actually keep watching our ad? Well, that's a good question. Send me a bunch of ads. So we published a scientific paper. It's all online, you guys. You can find it. In which we gave people the option, just stop. We paid you. Every ad you watch, you earn, I think, $3. And then we asked you something about it. But you could, and these were all PSA. So you actually donate money to a charity afterwards. So you watch it for 1 second, you watch it, they're all like, maximum 3 minutes. Watch for 3 minutes. And what we found was the more your neurologic immersion was higher, the longer you watch, the more likely you were to donate money. So it's really creating content that, plays into your intentions to continue to watch it. We all have so many options. And so I think that's the way to think about it. I want to create value by telling a great story. I want to build my product or service into that story whenever possible. I want it to be authentic. Production value, surprisingly, doesn't seem to matter that much. So we get high immersion from storyboards. Doesn't really matter. If it's a great story, it's a great story. So I think the basis here is great storytelling is going to win the day.
Yeah, content is king. We've heard that for so many years now. Well, Paul, I first and foremost, I want to say that we are, as a team, collectively going to use your platform, and we're going to see how we can improve on this. It's something I'm really excited about because I think it's going to make us better at what we do, which is all that matters. But I would love it if you could share. Again, a lot of our audience is going to be heavily vested in the opportunity to do something like this. So I want to give you a chance to plug that. Where can people go to use your platform and see how they can improve the experiences they're creating?
Thank you so much, Jason. Very kind of you. Yeah, so it's software as a service. You only pay for what you use. So the website is getimmersion.com with an I. There's a couple different products there for live experiences, for recorded content. And a couple days ago, we released our free app for emotional fitness called Six, S-I-X, that helps people have these peak immersion experiences, which we've shown improve your mental health. So it's a free app. Anyone can use it. It's going to be free forever. And so we really need to have valuable experiences. Most of those are social experiences that connect us to others. And so if it's free, can't hurt you if it's free. You might as well give it a try. And that website is your6.com, the number 6, your6.com. Yeah, give it a shot.
I can't thank you enough. I just really appreciate the insights.
Thank you, Jason. It was a pleasure.
My conversation with Dr. Zach rewired how I think about storytelling, education, even leadership. It's not enough to make something good. We have to make people care. Because as he said, immersion isn't about liking something. It's about feeling something and taking action because of it. And whether you're a teacher, a marketer, a storyteller, or a parent, the way to truly reach someone is through human emotion, trust, and experience. If you haven't yet, hit subscribe to join our community. And if you've made it this far, I want to thank you for being curious.